Large parts of northeastern Nigeria are underwater. Hundreds of people have died in the worst flooding in a decade. And the release of water from a dam in neighbouring Cameroon has made it worse. So what's been the government's response? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the program. I'm Tom McRae. Northeastern Nigeria is seeing some of its worst flooding in years. Hundreds of thousands of homes have been destroyed and at least 500 people have died across several states. More than 1 million others have been displaced. Many communities have been cut off and unable to reach out for help. The flooding has washed out Nigeria's food-growing regions and flooded its oil-producing Niger Delta. The government has issued several emergency evacuation notices, but locals say they have nowhere to go. Those who survived are becoming increasingly desperate for help. We'll get to our guests in a moment. First, though, this update from Ahmed Idris in Anambra State in southern Nigeria.
Here in Umueri, conditions for the displaced are getting desperate. With just 2 hours to sunset, food is served in this camp that officials say now accommodates hundreds of people.
This food is not enough for about 3,000 people that is here. 3,000 people depend on this food, and we got it from charity ones.
She says they haven't received any relief supplies from government. This year's floods have ravaged at least 27 of Nigeria's 36 states, destroying lives, crops and homes in regions like Anambra.
Officials here tell us that hundreds of thousands of people in several communities are still out of reach. Nothing has been heard from some of them in nearly a week. And the passengers of a boat that capsized a week ago, killing about 90 people, were fleeing their submerged communities in search of help.
Emergency agencies had warned of destructive floods this year, but the level of government preparedness was poor. So too was people's response to evacuation warnings. That has left victims like Nkechi and Nene wondering what the future holds.
There's nothing to go back to if my house is left standing. My animals, crops, everything is gone.
Anambra is one of the worst affected states. Officials say the danger signs have been there, yet the federal government has failed to act.
Cameroon warns about this. And so we know that every 2-3 years this happens. Cameroon will open up the dam, and then it comes here and wipes off everything. I mean, it's gonna get to a point where the water will come and envelop the entire country.
Nigerian officials say humanitarian supplies have been distributed nationwide, but that is little comfort for hundreds of thousands who are yet to receive any help from government at any level. Ahmed Idris, Al Jazeera, Otuacha.
Well, as we heard, the flooding has been made worse by seasonal rain and planned water release from a dam in neighbouring Cameroon. Lagdo Dam is in northern Cameroon and was built in 1982. Nigeria was supposed to build its own dam to offset the excess, but never finished it. Well, every few years, water is released from the Lagdo Dam and spills into the Manu River. That then floods the river and its tributaries that flow into Nigeria. Now, even with advance warning, the water from the dam affects 13 flood-prone states in Nigeria, many of which supply the rest of the country with grain and oil. Let's bring in our guests now. In the Namibian capital, Windhoek, Suleiman Adamu, Nigeria's Minister of Water Resources, and in Abuja, David Arinze, a climate activist and renewable energy specialist. A warm welcome to both of you. And just a note, we did invite someone from the Cameroon government to join us on the show, but they declined. David, I want to start with you. First of all, you're there. Can you just give us a bit of an idea of just how bad the flooding is?
Thank you so much for having me on the show, and it's such a pleasure to be here at this time. However, it's not a pleasant experience for those who are currently in Nigeria and who are experiencing the impacts of the flood and firsthand. I would say, for example, I'm based in Abuja, and Abuja has suffered severe fuel scarcity for the past couple of weeks as a result of the flooding. You go back just to, some kilometers away from Abuja in Kogi State, you have several trucks of loaded with foodstuff, farm produce, livestock, which are also stuck on the road, and the flooding has impacted significantly the transportation of goods and services and people, from one place to the another. You can also talk about the number of lives and properties and houses that have been lost. As at the last report I read from Pulse NG, over hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced, and tens of people have lost their lives as a result of this flooding. And so it's really a terrible situation. It's not one that is exciting to see, and I can tell you that millions of dollars, in forms of services, goods, and business activities have been thrown down the drain as a result of this flooding situation happening across the Middle Belt states, from Kogi State to Benue State to Adamawa to Edo to Delta State, Rivers, Bayelsa, you name it. It is significantly bad, and it is not good at all.
Yeah, seeing some of the pictures, the devastation is just so widespread, it's hard to believe. Minister, there's more than 500 people are dead. There's over 1 million people displaced. Many that Al Jazeera have spoken to have said that they've simply been forgotten about. So what is the government doing to help them?
Well, this is quite a very devastating situation, and my condolences to all the people that have lost their families, or people that have lost their loved ones, and also lost their life, belongings. It's an unprecedented flood, but let me say that almost on an annual basis, we always, around March, April, we have the Nigerian Meteorological Organization comes out to give a forecast of the climate situation, what is expected during the year. And I follow up as Minister of Water Resources with what we call the annual flood outlook, where we bring out all the information about the potential areas that are going to be flooded. Well, the floods have happened. It's difficult to stop flooding, but at least early warning is important. But these rains this year have been so unprecedented, well above the flood situation in 2012. Our gauge, how we gauge it was at the Lokoja confluence of rivers Niger and Benue, where in 2012 about the gauge reading there was about 12.84 meters, but as of the 4th of October this year, it had reached it was 13.22 meters, which is like 12.5 inches or 380 millimeters above the 2012 level. So certainly we have a Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management, which supervises the Nigerian Emergency Management Authority, NEMA, and I'm sure they are doing their best, but it's been so overwhelming. The situation is not only in rivers on the basin of the Niger and Benue basin, but it's all over the country. If you take like the Northeast, where we have Jigawa and Yobe states, the flow regime there, the watershed is the Jos Plateau, and those rivers drain into the Lake Chad area. They've also suffered a devastating amount of flood. So it's all over the country. Floodplains, old rivers, dead rivers have come alive, and it's quite a challenge. But I'm sure that we'll be doing the best we can between the federal and state governments. Certainly, the issue of managing the disaster is not under the purview of my ministry, but of course it's our government, and I'm aware that the National Emergency Management Agency and the ministry are doing the best they can to provide succor and alleviate some of the suffering.
Okay, David, just really quickly, do you think that the government's doing enough? Are people there on the ground getting enough aid?
So when you look at the actions that the Nigerian government has taken, The Nigerian government, for example, has sent a delegation, to discuss with Cameroon and had an MOU where the Cameroonian government would usually inform Nigeria about that they're about to release excess water and all of that. It's great to know. But what we fundamentally have is an infrastructure problem. Because if the dam, the Hausa dam, Dansim Dam that was supposed to be built, had been built, this would significantly cushion the effect. I give you some few statistics about this dam, because part of the reasons why we have this flooding issue is when the excess water is taken from the Lagdo Dam and from Cameroon, and it begins to flow through the tributaries of the River Benue and River Niger. But I tell you that the dam that was supposed to be built by the Nigerian government several years ago was supposed to be 2.5 times the size of the Lagdo Dam, which would have easily cushioned the effect. I tell you again that it's not just to cushion the effects of flooding, but this dam also had a number of economic capabilities. One of it was supposed to be able to ensure that it generates nothing less than 300 megawatts of electricity, and by so doing, ensure that provide electricity to provide irrigation services and support for over 150,000 hectares of farmland. When you look at that alone, then you understand that this is not just an infrastructure that needs to set in place just to mitigate flooding or to help manage the issues around flooding or the excess water that comes from Cameroon, but also infrastructure that could improve the lives and livelihoods of those people within this region. And that was the plan. But so it's not a question of whether we get relevant information from the Cameroonian government. NEMA had confirmed that Cameroon had even sent some alerts, but sending red alerts to people who are living and going about their businesses to have to leave those locations is not good enough. Because at the end of the day, when the flooding happens, when the destruction of the impacts of this flooding occur, when they come back to their businesses, they now need to start from scratch. They lose their houses in the process, they lose their businesses in the process, they lose their properties in the process. That is not enough. That's not a solution. Yeah. Red alert is not a solution. We have a major infrastructure problem that needs to be fixed. And if it is not fixed, every year we'll get the notification, yes, this flooding is going to happen. But we need to fix this infrastructure. We need to get this dam completed. We need to ensure that the economic activities that's supposed to be created as a result of this dam begins to come into play. Because without getting this solution in place, we will just be beating around the bush and will not be taking a significant solution towards tackling this problem.
I know, having researched for this program, a lot of your countrymen feel exactly the same way, David. Just want to explain to the international audience that might not understand the region that well. In the 80s, Cameroon built a dam themselves, the Lagdo Dam. At the same time, Nigeria was meant to build their own dam further downstream that was approximately 2.5 times the size of the Cameroonian dam, but that would act as a buffer to stop any overflow from the Cameroon dam. But that has, to this day, never been finished. I'd like to bring in our third guest now from Aberdeen in Scotland, Manu Lekunze, a teaching fellow in politics and international relations at the University of Aberdeen. Thank you very much for being on the program. Manu, can you explain from a Cameroonian point of view why you think there has been so many issues around both the Cameroon dam but also the Nigerian dam as well?
Yes, so it's good that you started by giving a little bit of background on how the infrastructure was supposed to be managed around this area. So, let's not kid ourselves. This issue is fundamentally a water management issue. I know the minister has talked about the rains being unprecedented. While yes, the rains are heavier this year, but all the rains and the flows of the rivers have been studied for so many years, and all of this is predictable. So you have issues of poor town planning in Nigeria, poor water management in Nigeria, and talking about the case of Cameroon, Cameroon built a dam anticipating Nigeria to respond with a dam that can manage the flow. Cameroon informs Nigeria of its necessity to release some of the water in the dam. Nigeria does nothing, and when the floods come as they have come, Nigeria tried to use Cameroon as the scapegoat. So we have to be clear that this is an issue of poor governance in terms of urban planning, as well as managing what is a Nigerian resource. The water is a resource in Nigeria that should be managed effectively. As the other speaker said, this has saving lives in terms of avoiding floods, also have implication on economics. So if you were to build the dam as Nigeria is supposed to have, then it will produce electricity, which will then feed into the economy and the livelihoods of the people. So fundamentally, this is a poor governance issue, principally on the side of Nigeria.
Okay. Minister, you're in charge of water resources for Nigeria. It's been 4 decades. Why hasn't the dam been finished?
First of all, let me say that it's easy to lay all the blame on Lagdo Dam. I think we're cherry picking, but the gentleman from Aberdeen was kind enough to mention that there are other issues, there are planning issues, and these are centered on the fact that we have a federal government, a federal system of government, so there are responsibilities for federal government and there are responsibilities for the states. I want to say that it's not just Lagdo Dam, yes, it's a factor, but we don't need only Dasin Kowa Dam on River Benue for us to be able to check this situation. We need so many dams on the Benue Basin. We need to dam Donga, we need to dam Taraba, we need to dam Katsina Ala, in addition to the Dasin Hausa Dam that they are talking about. When we came into this administration in 2015, there had been an effort to start the process of constructing the Dasin Kowa Dam, the planning aspect, but the planning was very poor, so we had to start all over again. As I'm talking to you now, there are consultants working. They have done the feasibility study. They are doing detailed engineering design for us to be able to have a proper design and a proper dam project. Initially, when we came in, we were looking at a BOT arrangement with some contractors who wanted to build a hydropower component along with it. But unfortunately, they said that when they checked that the financial model wasn't suitable for them. Yes, we need the Dasin Kowa Dam, but we are not all the Dasin Hausa Dam. We also have, this government has completed one of the projects, which is Kashibila. It's also one of the dams that needs to be a check. But this is a process that's going to take some time. As I'm talking to you now, we have signed MOUs with several companies. We have 2 dams, hydropower projects, dam and hydropower project that are being planned on River Benue. There's a Lokoja Benue 1 and Benue 2. There's also a business plan, outline business case approved for Katsina Ala. And there are quite a number of other smaller projects, in addition to hopefully in the future, the Mambila hydropower project that we hope will come on stream. The problem is the Benue River has so many tributaries that have not been, dammed. And therefore, it's not only about Lagdo Dam. And let me say that Cameroonian authorities are not being truthful. We signed an MOU with them in 2016. They were supposed to be alerting us on a regular basis. Every year, we are the ones through the Nigerian Hydrological Service Agency that go to check on them. 2 years ago or 3 years ago, they released the waters without informing the Nigerian authorities, contrary to the provisions of the Memorandum of Understanding that we signed with them. And we even had to write a protest letter to the Cameroonian authorities. This year, they released the waters on 13th of September. But that's not the only issue. It's not about the Lagdo Dam release alone. The entire country has been flooded because of unprecedented rains. Lagdo Dam is a factor, but it's not a significant factor. And let me say this. We have transboundary waters, yes, the rivers Niger and Benue, but they constitute only 20% of the total freshwater flow into the country. 80% of the rest of the flow is actually generated within the Nigerian territory from either Mambila Highlands or the Jos Plateau or the highlands in Benin Republic that drain into the southwestern region.
Okay, I guess, there's 1 million people standing in water wondering when they'll be able to get back to their homes, if at all. They don't want to play a blame game. They're just looking to the government to actually come up with a solution. So can you give us a timeline on when the dam might be able to be finished? Because we know that the Cameroonians are going to continue to release water. So is there a date? Is there a timeline that you can give these people that have lost everything in these last floods?
You cannot. I've said that the dam is important, but it's not the only issue. But a dam of that importance and that strategic importance needs to be properly designed. Because if by the time you put up a dam where we want to put it, the chances are that the water will inundate even parts of Cameroon. But there is a more detailed engineering study going on, which I commissioned. And I feel that all the necessary studies need to be done so that the dam does not become a problem when it is supposed to be a solution. That is one. Then we have other strategies that we're looking at. River Niger, for instance, flows in from, starts from the Futajalon Mountains, crosses through 5 countries before coming into Nigeria. A lot of it is in the Sahara Desert. So it comes with a lot of sediments. And we're already planning a detailed master plan study for rivers Niger and Benue, so that we can introduce some river training solutions going forward, and maybe also reclaim some areas and provide better navigational channels within the rivers, as it used to be several decades ago. Okay. And when we do that, we feel that by improving the capacity of the channels of rivers Niger and Benue, we can alleviate some of the problem. But there is no one fixed solution. Water resources management is tough, and it takes years to achieve. Even when you start a program, you can take decades before you're able to conclude it.
Okay. Manu, we're going to go to you now, just before we finish up this program. What do you make of the minister there, I guess alluding to the fact that the communication from the Cameroonian side hasn't been what it should be?
Yeah, so you could say that that's the case because, like I said earlier on, there's a degree of poor governance in this case. Maybe signals are not picked or transmitted as they should be. But what the minister is not saying, though the minister has said a lot about accepting that Lagdo is a small part of all of this, what the minister, perhaps because it's not part of his portfolio, is not talking well about town planning or city planning in Nigeria, how people are building on floodplains, how even Nigerian laws around building on floodplains are not properly enforced, because this is part of the whole flooding system. Like you mentioned earlier, there are people standing in water asking what needs to be done or what could be done for them. And all of these issues have to be thought about in connection. It's not just about building dams or releasing water, but thinking about a holistic process that manages water to protect people from floods, but also to contribute to economics. And from the Cameroonian side of it, they can only work on what the Nigerians agree to do downstream and what they can do in Cameroon without thinking much about what is happening in Nigeria. So both governments need an effective water management system, commission or whatever, that communicates on even a weekly or daily basis to manage what is a shared water resource for all of them. But we must emphasize that this is an issue where things have not been managed properly for so many years. The minister is saying all of this now. You would see that next year there will be another flood and another minister will come and say exactly the same thing. So this is not new. So you need to, as the media, hold the minister accountable to make sure that this happens.
Okay. Well, that's exactly what we try to do here on Inside Story. Thank you very much, Minister Suleiman Adamu, David Arinze and Manu Lekunze for being on Inside Story. And thank you too very much for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Tom McRae, and the entire team here in Doha, bye for now.